The Eastside Chapter 8. I don't remember much after that. I could only recollect bits and pieces from what must have happened the rest of that night. I couldn't remember if the experiences were reality or just part of a vivid dream. All I could remember was hearing Janelle's voice and laughter or crying. I don't remember which one. I just remembered when I finally became conscious again of my surroundings. My eyes slowly started to open as I could feel my body still in pain. My sides were completely wrapped up like a mummy in bandages. My right arm was covered in a white cast, and the top of my head was bandaged as well. The only relief for the pain was the soft white pillow that was lying against my throbbing head. My soft sheets from the bed against my body softened the pain on my back as well as my sore legs. My vision was blurry at first, as it felt like my eyes hadn't opened in weeks. I groaned from the pain as I began to see more clearly. I looked in front of my hospital bed with a small grin and was filled with happiness to see all the familiar faces surrounding me. Directly in front of my bed was Craig, sitting on a chair with a serious look on his face. To the right of him stood Danny and Andrew, and to the left was Freddie. I slowly turned my head and saw Teddy standing right next to my bed, looking down at me with a sad expression. All of them were dressed in all black attire, and not a smile or a grin was on any of their faces. I looked around the all white hospital room as I tried to sit up on the bed. Why is everyone so serious? And y'all happy to see me? I barely said, trying to adjust my voice. Everyone stood silent and began to look away from me or at each other, except Teddy, who just kept looking at me upset. Why all the long faces? I'm alive, guys. I'm good, I reassured them, trying to fight the pain. You were unconscious for the whole day. We thought that they might have killed you, Jay, Teddy said, placing his hand on my shoulder. Yeah, but they didn't. I'm fine, I said again, trying to change everyone's mood. Nah, you ain't fine, cub, Craig yelled out, upset, standing to his feet and slamming his hand against the metal railing on the bed. It's time we stop playing with these spics, bruh. We fixing to check them boys right now. They burned up my crib and do this to you? I'll put this on my baby girl, dog. I see any of them poppies. I'm lighting their ass up like a Christmas tree. That white boy ain't lying, Jay. You rolling out there tonight with our bats, and we gonna see how good them Spanish boys play they baseball, Teddy explained. We all going, Jay, Danny added. Yo, shut the fuck up. You the one that left him there. You was supposed to have his back, and you ran away like some pussy, Teddy lashed out at Danny, turning his body toward him and talking with his fingers. Like I told you before, I didn't leave him anywhere. I couldn't find him after he walked out with that West Island girl. I searched everywhere outside, in the back, in the front, by the pool area, but I didn't see nobody. I just assumed he was getting some, so I called Andrew to pick me up. Come on, Ted. You know I ain't like that, Danny explained, with his feelings hurt by the accusation. Yeah, right. We supposed to be crew, and you let Jahvon get jumped by those poppies, Teddy yelled some more. Calm down, please, both of you, I said, barely speaking as my voice just sounded like a whisper. Danny's right. I messed up. I was with Janelle and then left by myself. He did have my back. The poppies got me when I was distracted. I'm fine, guys. I'm tough. You're my best friend, Jay, and I will always have your back. And I feel like I wasn't there for you when you needed me, and I... Teddy, tell me a joke, I interrupted. I don't think this is the best, he said, shaking his head left and right. Come on, Teddy. Your jokes always make me feel better, I interrupted again, trying to make the mood in the room more positive. Please, Teddy. He let out a soft sigh while shrugging his shoulders and said, Why did the chicken cross the road? Why? I asked. To go to the strip club and get some chicken head from some chicken heads, he said as everyone in the room started to laugh hysterically. There it is, I exclaimed, laughing. See, now I feel better. We laughed for a moment, but our joy was short lived when Andrew asked seriously, "Who did this to you?" "Christian, Janelle's boyfriend. It was him and a couple of his goons," I said, rethinking about the events that happened that night. "Christian? That poppy that owns Hostile Entertainment?" Craig asked quickly. "Yeah," I answered. "Man, I know who that is. I know where his studio at. He bitch made, cuh. Me and my cousin bought a beef from him. And he always be with that clown dude, Loco," Craig explained. "Yeah, he was there too," I remembered. "Oh, we fixing to ride on them boys," Craig said, excited, snapping his fingers. "Ain't nobody mess with the homie Jay." "You know where they at?" Teddy asked, intrigued. "Man, it's Monday night. They be hosting open mic nights at Club 24/7. I be seeing they flyers all over downtown," Freddie explained. "That right, and I know where their studio is, bruh. Let's get Ghost. We can take my Jeep," Craig added. "We out, Jay. We gonna go take care of business for you, man," Teddy said, pressing his fist against mine. "Yo, be careful. They like to carry guns too," I warned. "Bitch, I stay strapped, homie. Ain't a thing to me. A poppy want to test my trigger finger. I'm gonna let him know how itchy it is," Craig said, lifting up his shirt and exposing a 38 revolver special handgun stuffed in his pants. "Still, be careful. I love all y'all," I said, lying back on the bed. They nodded and began to leave the room, except for Teddy, who pulled up a chair and sat next to my bed and said, "Give us a minute. I gotta talk to Jay. Then we leaving." The group nodded and vacated the room as Teddy took a deep breath, still looking upset. "What's going on, man? You alright?" I asked, concerned, because I'd never seen Teddy so serious in all the years I've known him. He was usually so upbeat and the energized one in the group that made everyone around him feel good. His playful demeanor was one of the things everyone loved about him. But not today. He wasn't playful or trying to be funny. He was just serious. "I'm fine. I'm not the one laying in the hospital bed. Are you good? That's the question," he asked, still with no smile or smirk. "I told you I'm fine. I'll heal. Remember that time in sixth grade when we were riding bikes down the bike trail and my tire hit a rock and I ended up falling down that steep hill in the woods? I broke my wrist and twisted both my ankles," I explained as Teddy nodded his head, remembering the event. "I was out riding my bike again down the same path a week later. I'm tougher than I look." He looked down and stared at the floor for a moment, then looked up at me and said, "Saturday night was a crazy night for me, Jay. Janelle called me like at 2:30 in the morning. She said that she tried calling you 4 or 5 times, but you never picked up. So she got worried and called me. She said the fifth time she called, she heard your phone ringing outside by the gate and went to get it and saw all the blood on the concrete. I went by your place to see if you were there, but you weren't. I drove down to Janelle's place and saw the phone and the blood. We both became frantic, but her a lot more than me. We searched all over, around the west looking for you. We finally found your car when the sun was coming up, but you weren't in there either. Janelle started to freak out and would not stop searching, so I stayed with her as we drove around for hours. We finally ended up at the park, and I was going to turn the car around, but she wanted to look around. When we finally saw you, you were completely unconscious. We tried waking you, but you wouldn't wake up. That's when we called the ambulance, and they came and picked you up. There was so much blood. and your face was swollen. It was just crazy to see you like that. The doctor said that we were lucky to find you when we did because if we waited one more hour, your throat would have swelled up too much, which would have stopped your path of air to get to your lungs. You would have died. I will never let that happen to you again, Jay. I swear. It's not your fault, I reassured. No, you have my word, Jay. Never again, he said furiously. I could have missed one class. I should have known going to that party was real important to you. Janelle's a cool girl. Janelle, where is she? I asked curiously. Oh, she's. Teddy replied before getting interrupted by my father rushing into the hospital room with Pops and his wife right behind him. Son, are you okay? Oh my goodness, look at you, my dad said, pushing past Teddy and coming close to the bed. Hey, Dad, I'm fine, I whispered. Just a little painful, but I'll be okay. Who did this to you? What happened? He asked as Teddy started to leave the room while giving me a hand signal to let me know he was leaving. I stayed silent for a moment because I was reluctant to tell my father the story. I was afraid on how he would react. Come on, son, tell me. Hey, boy, you've looked better, Pop said jokingly, trying to lighten the mood in the room as well. Hey, Pops, thank you, I replied sarcastically. Not now, Richard, my dad said to Pops. Now, tell me what happened. I got jumped by some poppies, I replied to him slowly. What? Where? He continued his questioning. On the west side, by Janelle's house, I said after taking a deep breath. What? What the hell were you doing on that side of town? Didn't I tell you not to go over there? Look at you. Your problem is you never listen, my father yelled, upset. Give him a break, Jacob. You see the boy's been through enough, Pop said, defending me. Mind your business, Richard. This is between me and my son, he snapped back quickly. And I want you to stop messing with that girl Janelle. It seems like every time she's around, some type of trouble comes around you. I don't trust her. She could have been the one to set you up. What? No. She was having a birthday party. I just wanted to give her a birthday present in person. She didn't even know I was coming, I explained. It doesn't matter. She's obviously one of them. And you belong over on this side. You know what's happening now. So stop being stupid and start thinking with the head that is attached to your neck and not your balls, he exclaimed very seriously as I turned my head away from him. He continued to lecture. Until this east side, west side thing is resolved, I don't want you seeing that girl, and I definitely don't want her in my house again. Look at me when I'm talking to you, boy. I turned my head back to face him. Do I make myself clear? He asked, looking deep into my eyes. Yes, sir, I answered, knowing that I had no intentions of abiding by his rules. Oh, my goodness. Jahvon, you didn't tell me the masquerade party was on the west side of town? Pops exclaimed. You knew about this? My dad asked Pops angrily. Now, calm down, Jacob. He told me that there was a party, but he did not tell me where. He must really like this girl if he's risking his safety for her. Let's just ease off of him a little, Pop said calmly. No! I'm tired of this mess. I have to miss a whole day of work when I just got promoted just so my horny son could get his dick wet and end up in the hospital? I don't think so. If he can't stay out of trouble, he needs to move out on his own, my father said, continuing to yell. It's not like that, Dad. I tried to defend myself. I don't want to hear it, my dad interrupted. Now, I'm going back to work. The doctor said you should be better after a week. Now, when you get back home, there's going to be some changes around here. No more of this east side and west side bullshit. I'm done with it. Yes, sir, I said, annoyed, as he walked out of the room. Pops grabbed a chair and sat next to my hospital bed. He's just in one of his moods, Jay. Don't worry about it, okay? I understand love makes us do crazy things. Just thank God you're still alive to talk about it. Listen, get yourself completely healed up, and we'll discuss the partnership afterwards, okay? Okay, but hey, who said I was in love? I answered and asked quickly, slightly appalled by the accusation. He just smiled at me and softly patted my shoulder with his hand and got up as his wife came over to kiss me on my cheek and said, Hope you get better soon, Jahvon. Your father could be a bully sometimes, but he loves you. We all do. I cooked up some dinner and placed it in a container in case you get hungry. Thank you, Mrs. Nylon, I said, appreciative. You're welcome, she replied. Well, see you in a week, Jahvon. Feel better soon, Pop said, holding his wife's hand as they began to walk out of the room, waving. I laid my head deep into the pillow and looked up at the ceiling fan, just thinking about how crazy the summer had been. And as fall slowly approached, I hoped at that moment that things would go back to normal, to my regular life before this feud started. But I didn't realize that things were destined to get more complicated and would never be the same again. My thoughts rambled on until I started to feel more drowsy and my eyes began to shut, but was interrupted by a knock on the open door. I turned my head to see Teddy standing in front of the doorway with his body halfway through. Yo, Jahvon, you asleep? He asked with a grin on his face. Nah, I said, rubbing my eyes to focus my vision. Okay, good, because I have a visitor, he said before slowly walking out of the room. I looked at the open space, confused as to whom he was referring to, when Janelle slowly walked in. Her uncombed, frizzy hair was pressed on her face as she stood by the door with a sad expression. She stared at me nervously, like an adolescent in trouble with her parent. I could feel her extreme emotions all the way from the door. She wore a regular pair of jeans, flip-flops, and a small hooded sweatshirt, and looked like she hadn't slept in days. Hey, you, I greeted with a smile. Why so far? I won't bite. Hard. She looked at me very seriously and replied, I'm sorry, Jay. She said it so softly that it almost sounded like a whisper, as her heavy emotions prevented her from speaking loudly. Come closer. I can barely hear you, I whispered to show her that I was not upset. I'm sorry, Jay, Janelle said, moving closer, until she finally was next to my bed. I looked up at her and saw a better visual of her face, which had bags under her eyes from lack of sleep, while her eyes seemed bloodshot from what looked like incessant crying. It's okay. It's not your fault. Sit down, I suggested. She sat down in the chair as I could see tears emerging from her eyes. I thought they killed you. I looked at her with a grin and said, Well, they didn't. When I saw you laying there on the slide covered in blood, I lost it, Jay. I could see that the image of me battered and bruised was still fresh in her mind. I kept screaming and crying the entire time, screaming at you to wake up, but you wouldn't. I'm okay, Janelle. I'm here. This is me, I reassured her, trying to settle down her heavy emotions that looked like they were placing a heavy load on her. I rode the ambulance with you, trying to get you to wake up. And I kept thinking, this is my fault, she said, as I kept telling her that it was not her fault. No, it is. As soon as I saw Loco, I should have told you to go because I had a feeling he would call Christian. I didn't, though. I was being selfish. I was only thinking about me and how good you. What? I asked after she paused herself. If they would have killed you, I would have never forgiven myself, she said as tears started to drip down her cheek. This is trouble. We need to just stay away from each other. I'm sorry I've ever got you into any of this. I have to go. No, I said, grabbing her hand as she began to get up and walk towards the exit. Don't go. She looked back at me confused, still thinking I was mad at her. Stay. I like the company, I said, pulling her arm softly until she sat back down into the chair. Listen, Janelle, I don't blame you for any of this. This was Christian. We can all say what we would do differently after the event happened. But maybe we can't change the past because they were supposed to happen that way. I'm just glad you're here, visiting me now. She smiled as my words brought her comfort, as tears fell from her cheek. I wiped them away. Visit? I never went home. I was just so scared. When I saw you lying there, I honestly felt like the worst person in the world. When the doctor came out to the lobby and told us that you were alive, I felt even worse. I thought you were going to hate me or think I set you up. I didn't set you up, Jay. I know. I know. I heard what your dad said. He yelled it for the whole hospital to hear. I thought you were going to listen to him and hate me. I was going to go home, but Teddy forced me to talk to you. He said that you needed it, she explained, still emotional. My dad is an asshole. Don't even worry about him, I said, placing my fingers through the young girl's hair and slowly reaching for her arm to raise her body from the chair. You look tired. Yeah, I haven't been back home yet. I haven't showered or anything. Ugh, I must look like a mess, she replied, yawning, rubbing her red eyes. Nah, you look fine. Come here, I said, sliding over to the other side of the bed to make room for her while pulling her arms to come lay down. Jay, no, I can't. I have to take the bus home, she said, shaking her head back and forth, trying to pull her hand away from mine. Come on, you look exhausted. You need it more than I do right now, I said, trying to smile through the pain in my body. She reluctantly climbed into the bed and curled up as I wrapped my arms around her and held her tight. She stared into my eyes for a moment, but her eyes were too heavy to resist closing. My eyes closed shortly after hers, and we both fell into a deep sleep. It was a peaceful sleep, with no interruptions or dreams, just a feeling of serenity and tranquility. I could honestly say it was probably the best sleep I've ever had because it was with the best person I've ever known. The rest of the week, as I healed up, Janelle came to the hospital every day, from the beginning of visitor hours until the end. She would bring food from home to feed me and bring her homework to do for school. She watched as the nurses tried to rehabilitate me because I was having problems walking, but she kept trying to encourage me with her words. We would lie on the bed and watch television, or she would bring her chessboard from home and try to teach me how to play. I enjoyed that entire week we spent together. I slowly understood what Pops meant about love and what it actually felt like. I liked Shantae, but never like this. This was new. This was different. It felt like I had reunited with a long lost best friend or my universal companion. We conversed every day while starting to realize how much of the same things we had in common, and how most of her strengths were my weaknesses, and vice versa. I remembered staring at her one night when I was feeling much better while she was reading her book for school and thinking how beautiful she looked doing it. Oh, before I forget, I brought you a slice of pie. My aunt baked it. She makes the most amazing cherry pies, Janelle said, reaching into her bag and pulling out a plastic plate wrapped in aluminum foil. Want it? Sure, I said, grabbing the plate from her hands with pleasure. I used the plastic fork that she handed to me and removed a piece from the pie and placed it in my mouth. The taste was amazing. It was baked to perfection, like something that was prepared in a bakery. I exclaimed with a full mouth, "Oh my God, this is so good." I know, right? She exclaimed. She made it last night, so I took a piece this morning when I saw it lying in the kitchen. So, you didn't have a slice yet? I asked, devouring the tasty pastry. No, I'm fine. I'll have some later, she said, continuing to read her book. I looked at her reading again and thought about what Pops had said about the last piece of pie, and it finally made sense to me. As I said, "Here," handing her the last piece on the plate, still with a piece of crust on top of it. "No, that's fine, Jay. You can finish it," she said, thankful for the gesture. "I want you to have it," I said, still stretching the plate toward her. "Thanks," she said, shrugging her shoulders, then eating the remaining piece of pie on the plate, rolling her eyes at the delicious taste, and speaking with a full mouth. "Oh my God, this is so good." "I know, right?" I exclaimed as we both laughed. I stared at her as she went back to her reading, and from that moment on, I knew I didn't just like her. I knew that I was deeply in love with her. That next Sunday, the nurse told me that I was well enough to leave the hospital. Janelle came to visit me again, but that day she helped me leave. I had to use crutches because my legs were not 100% yet, so she helped guide me through the elevators and steep hallways. The clothes I wore to Janelle's party were still stained with blood, so Janelle bought me a pair of basketball shorts, flip-flops, and a white t-shirt to go home with. Once we got out of the hospital, we took a taxi to my apartment. Driving through the city streets, I watched Janelle looking out the window and observing the urban communities that resided on the east side. The houses and apartments were much older and smaller than those on the west. More people used public transportation and were outside their homes more frequently. She was intrigued by the down to earth vibe she received from the environment. I could see her smile grow as her comfort grew. Once we reached my apartment, the taxi driver helped me pull my crutches from the trunk before receiving his money for the ride. We walked towards my apartment for a moment, but I decided to take a quick detour. "Hey, I want to show you something," I said, leaning my head toward the left to indicate to follow me. "Where are we going?" Janelle asked as we walked. "I'll show you. You showed me your special place, so I want to show you mine," I stated with a grin. "It better not be some drug house," she said jokingly. "Shut up. Come on," I said, going faster with my crutches. She followed me through the complex as we walked through the parking lot, admiring the cool evening air. We walked over to a metal gate, which I told her to open because my arms were occupied by my crutches. We entered into a playground with a large basketball court. "This is what you want to show me?" she asked, not impressed. "No," I answered, hopping down a concrete walkway lying over a field of grass. We kept walking until we reached the corner of the walkway, which led us to two large concrete walls attached together by another large concrete block used for a ceiling. The corridor was square and completely covered with graffiti. The spray painted area was full of designs, names, and pictures. The details were so complex, It looked as if a trained artist had designed the art that were splattered against the walls. This is what I wanted to show you. Wow, she exclaimed as she looked all around the large corridor, admiring the artistic genius that was used to spray paint all over the walls and the ceiling. She walked around with her mouth open and said, "This is amazing." We called it the 16th Chapel. It was a place for kids who were artists who did art and graffiti could come to express themselves artistically and keep out of trouble by not spray painting on public property. We gave it the name because if you look up, this kid named Michael painted that scene of the dragon blowing fire coming from hell into heaven, where the fire turns into wind and raindrops. He was like the hood's own Michelangelo or Da Vinci. "These are so good," she said, touching the walls. "These kids should go to art school or something." "Ha!" I mocked sarcastically. "These kids can't afford that type of stuff. They just do it for the love of it. It's not much, but it's beautiful," she interrupted, still admiring the art. I slowly crept behind her and placed my crutches against the wall before I wrapped my arms around her waist and kissed her softly on the cheek. I pressed the side of my face against her head and said softly into her hair, "I guess things don't seem as important unless you can see it through someone else's eyes." My comment made her grin as she placed her hands on top of mine, absorbing my embrace. "I'm glad you brought me here," she said sincerely. "Me too," I responded. "Way better than getting thrown from a giant horse." She gave me a shocked expression and playfully slapped me on my arm right before she turned to the right corner of the gallery and asked, "What's that?" She quickly removed herself from my grasp and rushed to the right corner of the wall in front of her. I grabbed my crutches and hurried behind her. "What's what?" I asked, hopping behind her. She stopped at the right corner with an excited look on her face as I rushed behind her confused. "I don't see anything," I stated as I tried to look behind her. "Exactly!" she exclaimed with more excitement than before. "This part over here has the only blank space left." "So?" I questioned. "Let's draw something too," she said with a big smile on her face as I grinned back, amused by her enthusiasm. "Draw something?" I questioned. "Like what?" "I don't know. Anything. Something cool like a dragon blowing fire into heaven." I chuckled at her comment. "I don't think there's enough room for something like that. How about we just write our names?" I suggested. "Yeah, I have a cool way I write my name. I doodle it on my notebook all the time," she said, looking around frantic for something to paint with. She gazed up behind herself and called out, rushing toward an object lying on the floor in the opposite corner. "I think I see a can of paint right there." I looked on as she picked it up and started shaking it to see if any liquid was left. "Is it good?" I asked as she nodded her head yes, with the excitement of a kid on Christmas Day unwrapping presents. "Fluorescent Paint X," she read on the label. "What's that for?" "Oh, you have to see this place at night. All the pictures are done with fluorescent paint. So, at night, the lights on the top corners turn on. They're all black lights, so it makes it look like the drawings glow in the dark. It looks incredible," I explained. "Promise, you're going to come back and see it one day." "I promise," she said, turning to me with a grin. I looked down as she began to write her name on the wall. She spelled out Janelle with a heart for the letter A. The skills did not quite match the rest of the prestige neighborhood gallery, but it looked nice just the same. "That's how you spell your name?" I asked, confused. "Why the Y? I thought your name was spelled with a J." "In Spanish, the Y's sound like J's, silly," she said, patting my arm. "Except when they call me Yaya." "Oh, okay," I said, absorbing the information. "Let me see that can." She handed me the rusty white can of paint as I began to write my own name right above hers. I spelled out Jahvon with the letter V in the shape of two handguns facing upwards in opposite directions. Nice. Mine looks better though, she said, jokingly, in a serious voice. I turned to her and began to laugh hysterically, as my laughter made her join in. I stared at her thinking, I'm always laughing around this girl. I'm supposed to be in pain, but all I could feel is joy through my entire body. If laughter is the best medicine, she could heal my soul. I grinned and placed a "and" symbol in between our names. She nodded her head in agreement and grabbed my hand. The sun is setting, I said, looking into the distance as the shadows of the sun's reflection began to spread through the entire corridor. We watched it for a moment as she rested her head on my shoulder. I looked down at my watch and said softly, It's getting late. She took a deep breath of disappointment and muttered, I know. We walked back into my empty apartment. My dad must have been at my grandparents', which he usually was on Sunday evenings with Lily. The hallway was dark from the lack of light as I crept to my bedroom using the dim light from the sun as guidance. I clicked on the light switch in my bedroom, but with no response. I flicked the switch up and down, attempting to get power, but the room remained dark. Darn, my light bulb must have burned out, I said, turning on the lights in the bathroom next to my room. Oh, for a second there, I thought you didn't pay your bills, Janelle said jokingly, turning on the stereo system. Ha, ha, I exclaimed sarcastically. Hey, I'm gonna go take a shower. It felt good to shower in my own bathroom. She barely heard me speak because of the smooth music coming from the radio. Oh, I love this song, she yelled over the volume in the speakers. Yeah, I have his whole album in my CD player. Check it out. I'll be out in a minute, I explained. She quickly pressed the CD player sitting on top of the stereo and turned up the volume. I could hear the music over the loud crashing water slamming against the tub. I could hear her singing along to the cool melody of the slow R&B. The words in the song reminded me of the girl standing 15 feet away from my naked body as I felt my stomach get tight from my nervousness. We had never been alone before. Not like this. Inappropriate thoughts began to cloud my head as my heart tried to clear it out. I respected Janelle, and I would not want to do anything to make her feel otherwise. But at the same time, I was more attracted to her than any other girl I had ever known. I kept repeating, we were just friends, trying to convince myself that we were no more than that. The warm water felt amazing over my sore body as I could see the steam create a cloud around the shower curtain. I wanted to be with her. I needed to be with her. My thoughts became more animalistic by the second, and my urges were becoming too strong to fight. The feelings that I carried for her and my heart had to be expressed physically as well. And my only desire at that moment was her. All of her. I climbed out of the shower and placed a towel securely around my waist. I took a deep breath and reluctantly opened the bathroom door. The steam followed me outside the door as I walked into my bedroom to see Janelle sitting on my bed listening to the smooth music. She got up quickly after seeing my lack of clothes. I just began to look at her like a man worshiping a goddess and like a lion gazing at a gazelle. Maybe I should go, she said, stopping right in front of me, fiercely attempting to avoid eye contact while trying to make her way past me. I slid my body slightly to block her path from leaving. No, you shouldn't, I said, pressing my lean body against hers as she began to place her hand on my chest. Jahvon, we shouldn't do this, she said, breathing heavily. We shouldn't. But shouldn't is just a word. What I'm feeling is real, I said, placing my hands against the side of her face, placing my nose against hers. Our lips began to gravitate toward each other as our willpower began to diminish slowly. The smooth rhythm of the slow jam R&B music in the background helped drown out the loud breathing that pulsated through our lungs. I felt my lips start to creep down her face until she wrapped her arms around me and began pressing her lips against mine. Our resistance was futile, as we realized that we both wanted this moment as much as the other. She kissed me with such passion as our tongues abused each other inside our mouths. It felt like the temperature was rising, as I could feel her begin to let herself become one with the moment, and let her inner lioness attack me. I almost tripped as she pushed me against the wall and aggressively attacked my neck like a vampire after smelling fresh blood. The enthusiasm for each other became evident as I removed her shirt from her arms and tossed it toward the darkness. I calmly placed my hands beneath her curvy bottom and carried her as she wrapped her legs around my waist, still pressing her lips against mine. I laid her carefully on my bed and removed her jeans, one pant leg at a time. Amazed by her body, I began to kiss her tight stomach, surrounding her small belly button. I could see her eyes roll back into her lids as I began to kiss as low as her inner thighs could go. I could see her hands grip the sheets as her other hand removed my towel hanging from my leg. My enthusiasm for her satisfaction started to make her leak from inside, which saturated my dry sheets and caused her to moan uncontrollably. I slowly climbed onto the bed and blanketed her body with my own and placed my lips on her neck as she used her nails to claw my back, unaware that I was still sore from my injury. I showed no pain as I could feel the bed become a pond of our passion, and her screams of pleasure became background vocals to the soundtrack playing in the dark room. She began to ask me loudly to move more vigorously and take more control of her body as I obliged her every need. The pond became a lake as our sweat dripped from our naked bodies and her insides became an open faucet of pleasure and pain. I stroked deeply and slowly, touching every single crevice of her pearl, until I could no longer resist the tingling sensation that allured my body. I let out a howl as our energies began to fade, and we wrapped each other in our arms tightly. The strenuous activities fatigued our minds and bodies, as I could feel my eyes get heavy until they finally closed. All I could hear was the music surrounding the room and a faint whisper in my ear saying, "I love you. I love you too."